Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. I'm your host, Maryland Attorney Elsa W. Smith, and I'm the owner of the law offices of Elsa W. Smith, where we empower women through estate planning. Thank you so much for joining me this week. We have a wonderful, wonderful show for you again this week. I'm really excited about my guest. But before I tell you about her, I want to do a little housekeeping. We are streaming on StreamYard. So I want you to go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give StreamYard permission for us to view your comments. So let's get right into it. Today we're talking about IEPs and special education. I've met a number of parents who've had questions about this, and we're going to talk with the person I think who's really an expert in this. So let me tell you a bit about her. My guest today is attorney Frances Shefter, and she's the owner of Shefter Law PA. Frances Shefter has dedicated her whole life to working with children with special needs. She started with an undergraduate degree in early childhood education from Towson University. After a few years of teaching regular education, she obtained a master's degree in special education from Florida International University. After 7 years in the classroom, she moved to an administrative teaching position as the special education coordinator. 2 years later, she decided she was not making as much of a difference in children's lives as she wanted. She decided to go to law school, and she decided that law school was the answer, I should say. And shortly after graduating from Stetson University College of Law with a certificate of concentration in advocacy, Ms. Shefter opened her firm, Shefter Law PA, in Rockville, Maryland, where they help families have a stress-free IEP experience. The firm's main area of practice is special education law in Maryland and the District of Columbia. And now I present to you Frances Shefter. Hi, Frances.
Hi, Elsa. Thank you for that great introduction and for having me on your show.
I've been looking forward to this and looking forward to you sharing so much good information that I believe that the Women Winning Wednesdays audience can benefit from. So let's jump right into it because we've got a lot to cover. What is an IEP? Break down that acronym and what's the purpose of an IEP?
So an IEP is an individual education plan, and this is to help children get special education services that they may need. And it's for accommodations, goals, specialized instruction in any area. And basically it's to help even the playing field to bring a special ed student up with the general education class.
Okay, so what types of information is included in an IEP?
So the IEP, there's technically 8 parts to the IEP, but the most important are you figure out what the disability is, your present levels of performance, which is present levels of academic achievement and functioning now. They changed it. And then your goals and objectives and accommodations, any related services that your child might need.
Okay. And who is involved in creating a child's IEP?
So the IEP team is your local education agency representative, which is usually a principal or a special education coordinator. There's supposed to be a person that can go over evaluation scores, which is just psychologist, a regular education teacher, a special education teacher, any service providers for related services, and most importantly, the parent.
Okay. All right. And I know there's a lot here, but does an IEP, is it static? Does it change? And if so, how often does it change?
So IEPs change. They have to be reviewed annually, but they can change at any point in time. If a new accommodation is needed, or if a child reaches a goal, the parent or the school can request an IEP meeting at any point in time to review and to make any changes.
Okay, I want to unpack that a little bit, because what if I am for example, in this example, let's say I'm a parent. I have no idea, how the school system works and who I need to contact. I have a child who, I don't know if the child has special needs or not. I just know that they're not doing well in school. Who do I, as parent, Jane parent, who do I contact, or who should I contact?
As a parent, before your child is identified that you're concerned, is you reach out to the school. You can find out if there's a special ed coordinator, or you just reach out to the principal and say that you want to start the process to look at special education and see what is going on with your child. At that point, the school should, within 30 days, schedule, some people call it the SST meeting, some people call it the multidisciplinary team meeting, but it's basically they get together a team to look at whether an evaluation needs to be done and in what areas the evaluation should be done.
Okay, and are the parents a part of this meeting?
100%.
All right. And how should a parent prepare for this meeting? Do they just show up? What kind of information should they bring with them, if any?
So the parent, if there's any outside evaluations or diagnosis, the parent can bring that with them. Any anecdotal records they have or things that concern them, like anything that will point out to the school, like, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm doing at home, this is why I think my child needs extra services, and prepare that way. The most important thing for parents to know is that they are the most important person at that IEP meeting. The school's going to make it, you think that you're the parent, we know better, we're the educators, but you know your child best. So it's come prepared, know your stuff, know what you're asking for, and advocate hard for your child.
What are, there are so many, I guess, I'll call it extracurricular, but I'm sure that's not the proper word, but there are all these other programs that tutor your children, and parents pay tens of thousands of dollars, even though the kids enrolled in public school and their taxes are supposedly going to the school to fund the education. But how do they know? How does a parent know? It's like, okay, my kid's having a trouble in math. How is like a difficulty in a particular subject area different than saying, okay, my kid can't perform and therefore, he or she needs to be looked at to see if they have special needs? How do they make that determination?
So it's interesting you say that, because I've had several cases in which the parents have been paying for tutoring and the schools have tried to say the child's not eligible because the child's on grade level. But the reality is the only reason the child's on grade level is because the parents are spending the extra money to give the extra support for the child. Mm-hmm. And it's, you can see grades aren't always an indicator, but if your child's struggling, if your child's getting frustrated, if you go to a tutor, most good tutors can tell you something's going on here. Ask the teacher. Teachers are your best source of information, and usually teachers are going to tell you the truth. Something's going on, you might want to look at it. They might not be able to do that in an actual IEP meeting, but they'll one-on-one with the parent let you know what's going on.
Wow. What if the school says, just short of, developing an IEP, what if they just, the kids acting up in school, and I put that in quotes, so that they're acting up in class, and they just decide to say, you know what, the kid just needs to cool off, just send them home for a few days. Is that called like an unofficial suspension? And if so, why should parents be concerned about things like that?
So unofficial suspensions happen often, and they happen to our regular education students and the special education students. And what'll happen is the principal will call the parent and say, he's just having an off day, come pick him up and keep him home till the weekend, or keep him home till winter break. The problem with that is that you now don't have a record. And the schools will say, you don't want a suspension on your child's record, do you? And parents, no, I don't want a bad record for my child. But the reality is you do want that suspension on the record. Because if your
Really?
child, yeah, you do. Because here's the thing, if your child is not identified as special ed yet, and there is something else going on, you need that record of suspensions to show that there's something going on. And if your child is special education and already has the IEP or falls under the umbrella because they've already started the process, the problem is the school is trying to avoid having what's called a manifestation determination meeting.
Oh,
The
wow.
school is
That sounds heavy.
it is. It is. So the school's only allowed to suspend a child with an IEP up to 10 days. And then it's considered a change of placement. And that has to be an IEP meeting. And the reason this came about is that schools you have a child that would act out and they would just suspend them. But if it's a manifestation of the child's disability, that it's the disability that's causing the issue, the school can't suspend them. Or if they suspend them because they deem that the activity is harsh and, is severe enough there needs to be a suspension, they have to provide alternative education.
Wow. So just to clarify, if in these unofficial suspensions, there's no, send work home with the child, give us status reports of what the child's doing at home. They're just saying keep the child at home for however many number of days.
They are. Sometimes they'll send work packets home if the parents ask for it, but yet they're not providing any of the services and they're not giving any instruction.
Wow. So now I want to talk about, and we, during show prep, you and I talked about this, an issue regarding minority children, particularly Black children, but this affects other minority children as well. What if, and I'll give you a scenario, what if, we're talking about a child, an economically challenged child, he's poor, she's poor, witnesses abuse at home, or may even be the victim of abuse, maybe has a parent in the criminal justice system, in prison, and I'm going to complicate this, and instead of getting counseling, therapy that this child likely needs after seeing all that drama, instead they're like, oh no, we're going to deem that child special needs. Walk the audience through like what that does to a child's educational track.
So I've seen this often with the work that I do with DC Superior Court and abuse and neglect system, is that the children go through trauma. They've been removed from their home for abuse or neglect or so forth. A lot of times social workers will jump to special ed because the child's acting out. And as you said, they don't have the appropriate mental health services. What winds up happening is that the child might be put in a special education classroom that they don't necessarily need, because if you don't have your basic needs being met, feeling safe, feeling secure, being fed, having meals, if you don't have those, you cannot be available for learning. And so even putting a child in a special ed classroom isn't going to help the situation. All it's going to do is make that child feel that I'm special, I'm different. And it causes issues, because the other thing that winds up happening is that nobody talks to the children about what's going on and why they're in the program. A lot of kids grow up, I'm not special ed, I'm not a retard is the word they use, because that's what the kids see and have heard. And they don't understand that special ed just means your brain works differently or your body works differently, and you just need extra supports. You're not stupid, you're just as smart. But kids that have the higher intellect, that are put in the special education classrooms and don't necessarily need them, they're losing out on academic curriculum often because of the behavior issues that's going on. But most importantly, they're not getting what they actually need, the trauma-based therapy.
In your professional experience, do you see it as an issue of race or class, or is it, economics, or both, that have these children, just farmed into going the IEP route? or special education route?
So it depends. It depends. The typical attorney answer. It depends. We love that word. It's definitely economic because the children don't have as many experiences when they're low economic. They might not have a parent at home that's reading to them every night. They might not get to go to the zoo, get to go to the beach, get to go to the museums growing up with that stuff. Mm-hmm. But then there's also situations where you have cultural differences and behavior differences that are just different. Not that one's better or worse, but since that child is acting different, a lot of times the school will be like, well, there must be something going on. It might be special ed because that child's acting differently than the rest of the children.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that. Yeah, different than the other children in the class. And let's say if you have a child who is, Black or Latino, and in a class that's majority, Caucasian, and add to that difference, maybe some of the other issues that we talked about. Maybe it's language, maybe it's issues at home. I guess the combination of those issues may make it, I don't know, more likely for a teacher who doesn't have that sensitivity, doesn't have that awareness to say, okay, there's something wrong with this child and he or she is not learning. They're probably special ed. So let me make that recommendation.
Right, is true. The other problem is that our teachers are overworked, and we all know that. Classrooms are too big and so forth. So there are times that a child might need some special services, not special education, not specialized instruction, but something else needs to be going on, whether it's behavior support or extra reading. And depending on the school, they might have that program, they might not have that program. And sometimes the only way to get the child any additional help is to get them labeled special education and get an IEP in place.
Wow. Okay. You're saying even though they're not, that's an important point. Even though they may not have any developmental needs or emotional needs, they have other needs, like they're not receiving the nutrition that they need. They're not receiving the counseling that they need in order to function. So, wow. Okay.
I was going to say, or even they're a late bloomer. We're pushing our kids so hard these days. It used to be when I went to school, kindergarten was optional. You learned to read in first grade. Now, kindergarten is where they're learning to read, and you're slow if you're not reading by first grade.
Wow.
But some kids don't get it until later.
Right. Huh. Fascinating. Frances, what suggestions, how can well, before I ask you that question, how do you, as an educational attorney, what's the role that you play and what's the benefit of meeting with someone with your expertise?
So a lot of people talk about there's education advocates and education attorneys.
Okay.
The difference is advocates are self-proclaimed. You don't get a certification. It's just you say, I'm an advocate. I know what I'm talking about, and I can help guide you. An attorney has the legal training. So an advocate might have the degrees in education. They might have been teachers. They know how to write an IEP and so forth. Attorneys know the legal stuff and the implications of what certain things on the IEP might mean down the road. So the problem is that I've seen advocates, there are some great advocates, I never knock them, but I've seen advocates get in over their head and not realize what they're doing. And then an attorney has to come in after to clean it up. And which means the child goes that much longer without services. The advantage of me is that I have both. I've been in the classroom for 7 years. I was a special ed coordinator for 2 years. I can tear apart an IEP. I can write an IEP, but I also have the legal training of knowing that school, you can't say no to that, or this is what you need to do instead.
I mean, because honestly, as you know, I do estate planning. I have, I'm learning so much just through this interview alone. But if I were a parent, I mean, I wouldn't know where to turn. I would need, my first instinct would be to, who's the expert in this area, because otherwise I'd feel like I'm going in blind into
And that
one of these meetings.
Right, and that's what happens often. There's so many times I've heard parents say like, "Wow, I didn't know education attorneys existed. I didn't know I could bring somebody," or that they had an IEP meeting that they were crying at
Mm.
because schools are bound by what the higher ups tell them they can and can't do sometimes. So even though a teacher might feel a child needs something, their bosses are telling them they can't do that or not to do that. Schools also, they're looking at the bottom line. They're saying we can't afford that, which is not an excuse. If your child needs it, the school has to afford it. They're getting federal funding. So the problem is, as a parent, I know it even happens to me when I walk in for an IEP meeting for my child. It's like you feel like parent, and then there's the school against you, and it's overwhelming. So bringing a support with you is very helpful, but also knowing that as the parent, you're the one that knows your child best, and that's so important to remember. Educate yourself, take classes, watch YouTube videos, do your homework, know what you can and can't be asking for in that meeting.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that, Frances. Because honestly, we talked about a lot just in like these last few minutes. The whole process a lot. I can't imagine going in alone. But for what tips do you have for parents? I mean, that are facing this situation, they don't know whether their child needs an IEP, or if they're already in the process. Like, what are some tips that you would have for them?
I mean, the most important thing is educate yourself. If you think something's wrong, trust your gut. Trust your parent gut. Our gut tells us. We know something's not right. Doctors will say, "Oh no, just wait and see," or "No, don't do that." Don't wait and see. This is your child. This is your child's education. Trust your gut. Go push. If a school says no to something, ask them why. If they say, "Oh, it's against our policy," ask them to see the policy. There's another little secret called a PWN, prior written notice, which
Hmm.
completely doesn't make sense because it's given to you after the meeting. But what the PWN is it explains what was discussed at the meeting and why not wait, sorry, that didn't come out right. Why it was or was not implemented. And
Okay.
so if you ask the school to do an evaluation and they say no, okay, can you please give me a PWN with that? And the school has to write it down that, oh, this is why we didn't evaluate, which is a very
Wow.
strong. A lot of times schools will back up and like, oh, no, okay, we'll do what you asked for because you just called them out.
Audience, that's a nugget right there amongst the other ones that you've heard during these last few minutes. That's that. Wow, 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 wow. Um, and so if they don't, I mean, by law, are they required to provide that to you, or is that like a policy? Is it
No,
law?
PWN is law. That's in your procedural safeguards. At the beginning of any special education meeting, they give you this stack of paper that's sorry, you can't even see, but it's like this,
Yeah.
it's procedural safeguards. And they say to the parent, here you go. These are your procedural safeguards. You understand that, right? Um, I'm an attorney and a teacher, and I still have to go research. Wait, what did that mean again? And look it up. So there's no way of you knowing as a parent everything that's in the procedural safeguards. One of the things is the PWN that is in there. They are required to give it to you in writing.
And one thing I want to circle back on, that you said, you talked about the differences in resources, and and of course that will depend on what jurisdiction you're in. If a school says, I know you said they're required to, but if they say we don't have the resources to fund X, even though it's been determined that the child needs it, what's the parent's recourse?
File for due process. The school has to provide it. If a team determines that a child needs a service, the school cannot say, well, we don't have the resources, we can't do that. They need to find another way. So if a child needs, for example, speech therapy, and it's determined the child needs speech therapy, but there's a shortage on speech therapists, so they can't give it. Okay, then they need to authorize compensatory education. They need to pay for an outside provider to give those services. They can't just say, we don't have it. And that's an issue that's going on now with the teacher shortages, is that a lot of parents are being told, well, we can't implement your IEP because we don't have the teachers. There's a shortage. And while we can have empathy for the school and the teachers, and I'm not asking the teachers to do more, I'm asking the school system to figure out a solution of pay private people, do what you need to do, that this is a legal document of what your child needs.
Wow. And I know I asked you this before, but what other suggestions would you have? You know, that you told the parents or suggested that they be informed. What else can they do? What other tips do you have for them?
I mean, I offer what I call strategy sessions. So if a parent's just not sure and they're like, I don't want to hire an attorney, it's not adversarial yet, they can schedule a strategy session with me to talk through everything that's going on. But again, it's educate, talk to other parents, talk to Facebook groups. I have a YouTube channel that you can go watch YouTube videos. I do lots of little 3-minute videos on all of the points of IEPs, what schools can and can't do. Read the procedural safeguards. If you don't understand stuff, Google it, look it up. These days with the internet at our fingertips, it's easy to find information, but also trust your gut and don't take no for an answer. Those are my two biggest things as a parent. Trust your gut and don't take no for an answer. If the school says no, take the step above, keep going.
I love that. And I've put your contact information on the screen. Everyone, you can go to Frances' website, shefterlaw.com. You can also contact her office at 301-605-7303. Her mission is to create a stress-free IEP experience. And frankly, she is one of the few experts that I know personally in this area. There are not a lot of people that do this kind of work. So I am very thankful that Frances has given of her time, her very valuable time, to join us here today. Frances, is there any last comments or advice you want to give to the audience as we approaching the top of the hour?
I mean, again, you're the parent. Schools like to bully parents. Schools like to, pretend they're the most important people at the IEP meeting because I'm Dr. So-and-so or I'm Principal so-and-so. But you know what? You're the one that's been with your child the most. You know your child best. And trust that and give the pushback that you need to do. Because if you don't advocate for your child, unfortunately, the school won't and nobody else will. So remember, your child needs you to be strong and advocate for him or her.
Thank you so much. Everyone, Attorney Frances Shefter, owner of Shefter Law, PA. She is licensed in the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia. Educational attorney and advocate. And I strongly advise for you to reach out to her. We put the information, I'm going to put her information one more time on the screen. Frances, thank you so much for your time, and we'll be talking again soon. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too, Elsa.
Everyone, wasn't that a wonderful interview? I am so glad that I have people in my circle of influence that have such specialized knowledge. And so you might be wondering, Attorney Smith, you're an estate planner. What in the world does this have to do with estate planning? It all has to do with estate planning. It's protecting your family. It's not just protecting your wealth and your assets, but it's also advocating and making sure that every member of your family has what they need. And this, in today's episode, we focused on education your minor children. Again, thank Attorney Shefter for joining me today. We are at the top of the hour. Join me week. Of Women Winning Wednesdays. Remember, if you have wills and estate plan needs in Maryland and the District of Columbia, I am at 7719. You can also social media platform to information with I'm Attorney Elsa W. Smith.